Kyle Wagner.
Hello.
And once again, special guest, Arvin Vohra.
Good to be here, everybody.
Arvin, what is this, like your 69th time on the podcast?
It might be, yeah. It might be the lucky time, yeah.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming back again, dude. We're super excited to have you on, as always.
I appreciate being here. It's exciting to be with you guys in is this called the Freedom Basement or the Anarchy Basement?
Anarchy Basement.
Anarchy Basement, even better.
Case.
Yeah, right?
Right.
Kyle hates it.
It's you got to wonder like how Kyle Wagner even stays here. It's like it's like this basement is like his kryptonite.
No, somebody has to be the voice of reason. It's like Ron Paul's thing in Congress all those years.
Yeah, it's like for Kyle.
Very
it was
similar.
like me being in DC, right?
Kyle, you're like
You're
the
no
voice.
longer invited.
Kyle, you're the voice of statism.
Yeah, we need the state.
Okay, so yeah,
Right off the bat.
all right. So Arvin.
Yeah.
So what's going on, man? So right now you're working on your 2020 presidential run.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. There's a few major things, right? Everyone knows that I'm about ending the welfare state and ending the income tax. And what's really important for this campaign, what the real core of this campaign is I want
age of consent, right?
That's going to be part of it, yeah. But one of the most important things in this campaign is this idea that I want to use the campaign itself, like campaign win or lose, to change culture in a way that's going to change the effect of government and the laws of government. Simple example, I've pledged to pardon Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, and Ross Ulbricht on my first day. But every time I talk about that, I encourage people to learn about jury nullification. That's what got us freedom of press in America. And I want to see that happening. I want the amount of jury nullification by the end of this campaign to be 10 times what it is right now. I want us to nullify the drug war.
Dude, hell yeah. It sounds like you're going about this whole campaign as like, if nothing else happens, at least you can be sure that I'm going to present a clear message.
I'm going to present a clear message, and I'm going to make things change. So the campaign itself, people always talk about the president has a bully pulpit, and they're right. They're right. A president does, but a presidential candidate also has a bully pulpit, and that's where you can get ideas like jury nullification, homeschooling, cryptocurrency usage, so many not joining the police and military. So many of these important ideas that don't depend on legal changes. We can start getting those to happen right now. I mean, I've already been, as vice chair, I had a smaller bully pulpit, but I got quite a few people to change over to homeschooling, introduce people to Bitcoin with a national level platform. It could be something that's even more culturally transformative.
Dude, I'm on board. As far as still at this point, out of everybody that I've heard that's running as a libertarian, you're hands down my favorite out of everybody that's running.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'll say, who do you like more, Joe Biden?
Everybody who's running as a libertarian, everybody's going for that spot.
Yeah.
You're hands down my favorite. Who's your competition as of now that you know of?
Oh my God! Who's running?
Yeah, for the libertarian
every
ticket.
day. So I was in Florida last weekend at their convention, and somebody announced during the convention, you know what I mean, and was in the debate. And I appreciate that she was in the debate, because I think that's what we need, open debates. But it's getting harder and harder to keep track of everybody that is announcing it. There's a lot.
I think once Bill Weld dropped out or switched to being a Republican, the it's wide open for the LP nomination, and I think it's going to come down to whoever has the biggest hat.
Mm-hmm. I hope not, because I don't.
Who has the biggest hat?
Well, is it maybe Dan Berman? Maybe Vermin Supreme has the biggest hat. I don't know.
Yeah.
If that's what it is, I don't have a chance. I don't even have a
guy.
hat.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Out of everybody that I've heard, it's like you were definitely hands down. I can't think of anybody who even rank close to you.
I appreciate that.
So yeah, hell yeah, man. I'm mad psyched about this. I like everything that you've said. And then we actually threw out ideas to our listeners. We asked them, what would they like to hear us talk to Arvin Vohra about? And so I'm hearing back here. So who are you thinking about as like a possible running mate?
I don't have a specific person in mind.
Well, yeah, because with the Libertarian Party, you kind of like you kind of like pick the VP just like you pick the vice president. So it's, I mean, you could suggest somebody.
Yeah.
Just like Gary Johnson suggested Bill Weld.
Right.
We see what that got us. You wouldn't suggest Bill Weld,
No.
would you?
No, I wouldn't. And I can tell you what the criteria that I would use, and this is the criteria that I would recommend the convention use. you want somebody that is a very electrifying and dynamic spokesman or spokeswoman. You want somebody who's really good at interviews, because that's the most important thing that you're going to do. People talk about fundraising like it's the most important of all the things, and it's important. I'm not saying it's not important. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes down to it, things like, Gary Johnson's like lackluster, barely awake Aleppo type moments, or Bill Weld's going to endorse Hillary, that kind of stuff, no matter how much fundraising you do, undoes all of it. People talk about...
Well, I mean, Bill Weld was an excellent speaker, but, he was saying the wrong thing. So I don't think, I think electrifying is important. But, I mean, first and foremost, you should probably have a somewhat decent message.
No, that's also part of it. So I want somebody I think we need somebody who's, one, a dynamic and engaging speaker, somebody that can really handle an interview, just knock it out of the park. And the second thing, as you correctly bring up, you need somebody that during the interview is going to knock it out of the park and score a goal for, I'm going to kind of combine two metaphors here. Score a goal for your team, not the other guy's team. Bill Weld did knock that interview out of the park. That was one of the best interviews endorsing Hillary of the entire of the campaign season.
Almost
But it's like wrong team, right? So you want somebody that's going to score a goal for our team.
Yeah.
Not against our team.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't normally you wouldn't have to mention that, but I think now we do.
We talked about before how you kind of like, when you're in interviews, you'll kind of like command the interview. Like you'll just be asked a question, and then you'll field it a little bit, but then you'll talk about like whatever the fuck you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Whatever the fuck you want people to hear.
I don't know if I ever told you that, guys. This one of probably the most interesting interview moment in 2016. There was me, the vice presidential candidate from the Green Party, Jesse the Body Ventura, of course, was the interviewer, and there was somebody else was helping the interview. Was also another interviewer, and my headphones went dead. I couldn't hear anything. I was in one room. The person who I was kind of debating against was in New York on a live feed, and so I had no earthly idea what he had said. And no one, I mean, you guys know, and I guess all you guys know now because I told you, but no one knew. And I could have said, like, listen, my mic isn't down, but that would mean I would have lost the few seconds of valuable live airtime that I had been given. So I just went with it. I was like, I don't know what he said, but here's what I'm going to say.
Wow, man. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's some quick thinking,
You thought Bill Weld was an electrifying speaker? Did I hear that correctly?
He was a better speaker. I hate to say it, than Gary Johnson.
Yeah, he was.
Like a lot of the time.
He was a polished political speaker, but I never felt like impassioned or emotional about Bill Weld. I mean, it was more of a, this guy sounds just like Mitt Romney, like a guy that's been a politician his whole life and knows he's very polished, but nothing of too much substance. That's how I interpreted it.
Well, yeah, he didn't have a whole lot of substance. So that's why I also said, as far as the message goes, he sucked. He wasn't in any way consistent with any way libertarian, really. I mean, it wasn't Weld a gun grabber. He made that comment where he said it would be cool if you take people's constitutional rights away from them. It's something about confiscating guns from people.
If you're on a terror watch list.
If you're on a terrorist watch list, right?
Which is done without any due process at all.
Exactly. It's very arbitrarily, you're thrown on there, so it eliminates due process. And he said it's fine if you take guns away from those people if you're on this terrorist watch list. And I believe like it was something like 1 or 2 million people were on there. People were on there that didn't even know that they were on there.
Yeah.
And
the problem with that is listen, like interviews, they can be high pressure. You can get flustered. I've been in a lot of interviews. I get that, right? But that's not a rookie mistake. And that's not a mistake that you would make if you have an actual legal background. Bill Weld, I assume in some part of his law school education, heard about the Fourth Amendment. Maybe not. Maybe he was sick that one, semester or whatever. But the point is, he probably heard about it. And for somebody with a legitimate legal background, with tons of experience, a lot of interview experience, you can't just write that off. And the worst thing is, he didn't even try to write it off. He wasn't like, oh, I misspoke. He was like, yeah, that's what I believe. It's totally against everything the Fourth Amendment stands for. But yeah, that's my belief.
Word. Okay, so now we're going to go to, say you get elected, dude. Mm-hmm. What are the first 100 days of Arvin Vohra going to be like?
I want to talk about the first day first. I don't want to get to the next 99.
Is there going to be like hoverboards? I mean, what's going to happen?
So there well might be, but I can't guarantee that. But here's what I can guarantee. First day, I'm going to take on the role of partner in chief like no one has ever seen. First day, I'm going to be pardoning Assange, Snowden, Ulbricht just the second I walk in that office. Then everyone who is in prison for purely a drug charge, everyone who's in prison for a Bitcoin type charge, everyone who's in prison for a gun possession charge. That means the crime is just having a gun.
Yeah.
And like not knowing, half the time people don't know the paperwork they need to do because it's so Byzantine. Just having a gun, you didn't hurt anybody, right? Pardoning all of those people, right? That's just the first, however fast I can pardon, that's how fast I'm going to do that. So that's just day number one.
Wow, Kyle, are you getting an erection?
No, I mean, I guess I'm hesitant when you hear about like a blanket thing like that. I don't know how easy it is to tell what these charges are. I guess it is fairly easy to say, okay, this was a nonviolent possession charge, or this was a charge for intent to distribute, a drug dealing charge, versus an assault or a murder or a theft charge. So I guess you can kind of parse it that way. But just when you talk about a blanket pardon of thousands of cases, I don't know. Maybe there could be some instances in there where it's somebody that really shouldn't be in walking free. I don't know. You know.
Well, I mean, if there's somebody in there that shouldn't be walking free, you just have to get them for a legitimate crime when there's actually a victim.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a key thing. And I mean, Kyle has a good point. I mean, I'm not trying to pardon people who, if there's any reasonable argument that this person had a victim, right? Like, let's say they got into a bar fight. Honestly, do I think that's a big deal? Not really. But if you got in a bar fight and they beat the hell out of somebody, they're not going to be on my immediate first, second of pardons list because I can see like there was a victim, right? Or at least you could argue there was a victim. But if somebody sold some marijuana to somebody else, you can't argue that there's no legitimate way to argue that there even could have been a victim to that. And so that's...
And plus, plenty of people are doing it right now, and it's 100% legal now, It's just fucking... It's eventually society's conscience, everybody's going to be snapped out of it, right? And they're going to be like, whoa, I'm smoking doobage like every day. I'm going down the store, I'm buying it at the dispensary. Like, how fucked up is it that we have all these people in prison for nonviolent drug crimes? Eventually that is going to happen, and these people are going to be freed. It's just a question of when. And then being a libertarian, I think right now, I mean, we need to be like all over this, just like we've always been all over the war on drugs.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest strategic errors that I think that we've made over the years, which is when it was difficult to talk about legalizing all drugs, there was a lot of pragmatists that said, listen, you can't... I'm using the word pragmatist like sarcastic. There's nothing pragmatic about this. It's just a bad strategy. There's a lot of bad strategists who said, we shouldn't talk about that because it scares people. And what I say, we should have talked about it. It should have scared people. The New York Times should have been covered like, these evil libertarians want to legalize drugs. They should have put in the mind of every man, woman, and child in America that libertarians want to legalize drugs so that when it happened, we would actually get the credit. Right now, we're not getting the credit. People think Democrats did this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put the idea out there in order for the reality to happen. Like, it starts with an idea, and if people never even hear that idea, then it's never going to happen. So I kind of agree with you there. I do think you'd have logistic problems trying to do all those pardons. Like, there would definitely be legal challenges because you'd be trumping, for lack of a better word, state law. So you'd have a lot of like state prosecutors and things like that would be very upset that the people that they worked hard to convict are then getting pardoned. I'm not really crying a river. I'm just talking about what actually would happen.
Like, what kind of paperwork do you have to do? What kind of records do they keep of these people? Like, how do you get the records from them?
Just backlash.
But I think the idea I think is 100% correct. I mean, whatever methods that need to be done, to the best of your ability, and free as many of them as you can. Maybe you can't get all 100% of these people. Like, maybe there's some obfuscation going on.
You would you'd really need a cultural shift, right? Like the population needs to get on board with legalizing drugs and freeing people. And I think
people are getting there.
Well,
it's people have already gotten there on weed. That's just long gone.
We are seeing a shift toward legal drugs.
Dude, we seen a shift. Kyle, this was like 5 or 6 years ago. More people were polled saying that marijuana should be treated as alcohol than were polled as saying that marijuana should be illegal. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was like 5 years ago, dude. Now we got the dispensaries, dude, and everybody's blazed up.
Well, also think about this. How many people do you think you would free with that pardon, if you had to guess?
It'll be a few million.
Few million. And, there's a good possibility that they're going to vote libertarian after that, don't you think? I mean,
Yeah.
You would think,
or they'd
yeah.
be more likely to, right? So, I mean, they're going to help sort of, even if these aren't yet laws, because Arvin hasn't been in office yet long enough to convince all the, the state governments to go that way. Certainly these people are going to be a force for that in their communities, right?
They will be.
Now that they're free.
And here's the thing: we don't even have to wait for my first day. And here's the really glorious thing: we have this radio ad that's about to go out, and it's just like it's the first sentence is about pardon, the second sentence is about jury nullification. Most people don't know you can pardon people for BS crimes because the judges lied to them. The judges, imagine if every judge opened by saying, "Listen, jury nullification is what brought freedom of press to America. If you think that this law is nonsense, say not guilty." I mean, if that started happening, and judges aren't going to do that.
Of course not.
But
They'd
as
be out of
I think,
job.
yeah, I mean, I think as you guys would I think we could all at least agree that there's one thing that I do know how to do well, which is get a lot of people talking about a controversial subject that I want them to talk about.
That is true. That is
Yeah,
no
man.
argument there.
Definitely.
And if I'm the nominee, this country, I can promise you, will be talking about jury nullification all day long. However much they talked about Aleppo, multiply that by about 100. That's how much they're going to talk about jury nullification. I'll trigger them one way or the other until they just can't resist.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Kyle, man, I think this is sounding pretty great, dude. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think like a lot of jurors are like much of the population support the laws that we have right now. So it's like it doesn't even occur to them
Yeah, but
that
you only need 1 out of 12 to like totally hang a jury and get somebody who committed a bullshit, victimless, nonviolent crime off the hook and out of the rape dungeon.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah, it only takes one person.
Yeah,
but
man.
I'm just telling
I'm
you
just
right
saying-
now,
I'm just
you're
saying, I think
getting
this sounds
12
pretty
out
solid,
of 12 are all like, oh, he's a drug dealer, lock him up for life.
Not really, man. It only takes 1. I believe Pete Eyre and Ademo Freeman, I believe they went on trial for some bullshit and then defended themselves. And then I believe they actually somehow were able to get out to the jury about like jury nullification.
Yeah.
And they might have even said it in court, while they were defending themselves. And it was just one dude got them off, and they gave him a cop block shirt afterwards.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they took pictures with them. So awesome. I mean, you can you can do some cool shit, man. It's really 1 out of 12. I feel like that's just like really a no brainer, especially for any nonviolent drug shit.
Yeah. And that's the key thing. I mean, I don't think people have fully understood the fundamental change that's happened, which is as media has gone from people talking at you media to discussion media, social media, people are being pushed more and more into high information voting. Now, it might be very biased high information voting, but people have more information. They explore more radical ideas now than they ever did before. And this is the time where we can make ideas like that catch fire. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, listen, if I'm the nominee, I'm guaranteed to get, 100 million votes or whatever Gary Johnson was saying last time. I don't know if I can do that. But I can definitely get 100 million people talking about jury nullification and pardoning. That I can make happen.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, day 1 sounds awesome, but day 2 is gonna suck when they JFK you, man.
One of my students, he said, he said, what would you do if the CIA, if you're elected, the CIA is gonna try to kill you? I'm like, what about my personality makes you think I wouldn't kill them first?
Damn,
dude.
So wait, day 1's actually gonna be really awesome behind the scenes too.
So now that's obviously a joke. I'm not planning to kill the CIA, whatever that means, but I'm planning to downsize the hell out of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you better definitely like
just to clarify.
Clarify what you mean there.
Just to clarify, that was a joke. I'm not.
He
Actually
meant cut their funding, right?
Yeah, I didn't mean
defund
to
the agency,
Kill the
and,
agency.
and lay them off,
Yeah,
right?
but I am going to be massively firing federal workers like no one's seen before. And yes, the intelligence the intelligence community they've been, aside from just their role being questionable, they've just been bad at it. I mean, they've just not been good at it. If the CIA was so skilled, why do we need a massive troop deployment to kill one guy? I would think that a CIA assassin or 10 of them or 1,000 of them could pull it off. I mean, these are the kinds this is like how
or
bad.
Stop 9/11 from happening, maybe?
Or even better. I mean, that would be even better. So right now we have 17, 18 redundant spy agencies. they're not getting the job done by any reasonable measure of success. They are dropping the ball again and again. They're pulling us into quagmires that don't make sense. So yeah, it is time to downsize that by a lot. And I'm going to be firing federal workers in every agency. I'm going to be getting rid of agencies left, right, and center. I mean, just everything that can go will go, and pretty much everything can go.
What would be the first one you get rid of?
Education.
I thought so.
Education. Yeah.
Now, and for those of you listening that don't know, Arvin Vohra's background is actually in education, correct?
That's true. I get to see, people, when I talk to, obviously on Facebook, most of the veterans who are very vocal about what I write are pretty pro-war. But all the veterans who message me personally they tend to be more anti-war. And they said that because they were there, because they saw this happening, that made them anti-war. They saw how pointless it was. They saw how much destruction was. They saw that there's no, the current deployments, there's no mission goal. There's no sense of what a completed mission would look like. I mean, there was one, kill bin Laden. They achieved that. And now they're still there. And then at this point, they're just like, what's
10 years later.
Yeah, 10 years later, they're still there. So me, working in education, I get to see very close and personal the damage the Department of Education does. It's just a daily, I see it every day how much damage it's doing. So yeah, I would get rid of that. I mean, I think that because they harm people who are the most vulnerable, they need to go first.
Okay, so the next question from the viewers was, what's your...
Helping us out with the funding, that like Bill Gates can do that and like pretty much nobody else. So there's that aspect, right? But there's a second piece I want to add. So imagine think of the 1950s like level of concern and care. Now consider this. You have things like LASIK, that's science fiction level technology delivered by skilled laborers. And the price has gone down from tens of thousands of dollars per eye to a few hundred per eye.
Yep.
On the other side, you have EpiPen, that's adrenaline in a syringe. It's like 1800s technology. The price has gone up from $100 to a few $100, right? So now imagine if we take all this advanced technology that right now it's expensive, the price gets pushed down. It gets pushed down by the free market because that's what the free market does to prices. You combine this science fiction level technology that we currently have. It's not something I'm making up. It's real. It exists. And combine that with 1950s level of care and concern, which we did have. Again, this is historical fact, not something that's just like some libertarian utopia.
Word, yeah.
Put those together, that's Arvin Care.
Hells yeah, dude. Hashtag Arvin Care.
And so how do we make it happen?
Arvin,
Yeah.
For our listeners at home, what's not free market about what we have now? Isn't it a free
there's
market?
so many things. There's so many things, right? There's
Yeah.
so many things. One is, imagine this. The most skilled doctor in all of Europe and the most skilled doctor in all of Asia have exactly one thing in common. We're not allowed to practice medicine here. Now, to make things more absurd, and this, the government's protecting us. To make things more absurd, nurse practitioners can practice medicine. And that's not saying anything bad about nurse practitioners, by the way. Nurse practitioners, what you guys are doing is fantastic. I'm not saying there's anything bad about that. But I'm saying that the idea that the best surgeon in all of Switzerland can't practice in America,
Right.
and the most unskilled nurse practitioner in all of America can, it doesn't seem like the government's. I saw this thing on Facebook where the thing said when a cop in a motorcycle pulls you over for not having a seatbelt, it's not about your safety. When that's going on, this isn't about your safety anymore. This is absurd. So one, open the border to doctors. Instead of doctors without borders, I want doctors within these borders right here. Like if somebody in Switzerland who wants to help people shouldn't have to go to Africa. They should be able to come to America to help people. Right. And so that's going to be one thing. Okay. Drugs, right? You want to buy drugs from overseas? Buy them. Why are we funding big pharma's border protection? I say if you want to buy it from Canada or France or Jamaica or wherever you want, do it. It's your body, your choice.
Right.
So you put those two things together, right? I mean, that's what healthcare is. It's medicine, it's equipment, it's doctors.
Right.
If the price of all of those goes down, you get rid of the incentives that allow people to overcharge for no reason, then instead of it something costing, let's say it costs right now $50,000, I'm saying it should cost $50. And for those of you who think that I'm just blowing smoke and talking nonsense, tell me this. This cell phone, this now old, outdated cell phone, how much would this have cost, 30 years ago?
Right. Well, it wouldn't exist, but
well, yeah. But I mean, if it did exist, if I could somehow get one from the Pentagon or something,
right.
Yeah, I mean, what of $1 million? I mean, how much would it cost? And that's the thing. We need to have the price incentives, and that comes from getting rid of the border.
Well, and you brought up LASIK, which when it first came out was thousands of dollars. Now it's like what, a few $100s?
Yeah, it's not just a few
$500.
$100, yeah.
maybe?
Yeah, when Gary Johnson came to Baltimore in 2012, I think it was, he said something that stuck with me, and he was like, imagine going to the grocery store and there's no prices on anything. And it's like you find out after you left what everything costs, and it's like it'd be very hard to shop. And he was like, we're missing the price element of our in our healthcare market. There's too many middlemen between the consumer and the doctor,
Right.
and he's like, we need more transparent pricing in healthcare. And I thought that made perfect sense. I was like, yeah, it's bizarre how you go through this channel and that channel, and then the government's obviously a major player, pumping tons of money into the healthcare market, which amazingly, hasn't brought the price down. Right? It actually makes the price go up when the government funnels billions of dollars into the healthcare industry because they're gonna charge. Doctors want a piece of that.
Yeah, I mean, the people are trying to figure out right now, how do I charge more rather than how do I drive the price down? Every normal business on earth, the first question is like, how can we offer this cheaper? How can we make this better and cheaper? Not how can we charge more so we go out of business compared to our competitors. But think of, and to use your example, Kyle, if there were, now imagine that there are prices, but somebody else is paying for them. If I'm going to a grocery store and I know that Matt's going to pay for everything, and the prices are on there, I'm only buying the most expensive things.
Yeah, you're getting filet mignon, you're getting all the most expensive stuff, and that's a great analogy for socialized medicine. Or it's like, Matt's going to pay for it. The taxpayers are going to pay for it. You remove all incentive for people to be frugal or
and then there's one
efficient
checkout line with 1,000 people standing in it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah, I saw this. I talked to somebody who'd done this really incredible documentary about what welfare has done to the Eskimos in Alaska. Right now, it's become almost this cultural norm in this one village where she was doing a lot of her research. It's almost become like a cultural norm to just never brush your teeth, let them fall out because they have free dental care, and they'll just get like fake teeth put in, top quality, right? And that's an insane expenditure.
Yeah,
it's not good for it's not like it's good for your health. I mean, there's nothing good about it, right?
No,
that's like what if you take the extreme of the welfare state, you end up with the worst kind of consequences. On the other hand, let's say you have the reverse, whereas, if you have cavity, you got to pay for it. Now people are like, well, if for no other reason than I don't want to pay, I'm going to try to take care of my teeth. Those are the type of things that we want to see. Healthcare that you actually pay for makes you want to be healthier, and it makes the other people want to drive down the cost.
You have to look at Americans, and like if you ever watch like My 600 Pound Life, look at. Do you really want to have to pay for the people that choose that kind of lifestyle? I mean, you're going to be on the hook for that. Like, it removes all incentive for people to take care of themselves and have any kind of personal responsibility because they can pass the buck. They can put that cost on someone else.
Why'd you look at me when you said that?
I
I
didn't.
paid for your
shit.
This is my 600-pound life over here, all right?
You don't weigh 600 pounds, but yeah, that shows.
No, we only pay for your chairs, Phil. That's
crazy. Most of those people are on disability or on some sort of welfare.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think the next topic here.
Hold on. Let me lead it off.
Oh, okay, but the thing is, we've only done the first day. We actually do like days 99.
Oh, yeah.
I thought we
still on the
just moved
first
on to,
100
I thought we just
days.
moved on to healthcare. Okay, shit.
Yeah.
Okay,
all right, so we got to go back to first 100 days.
Let me just I put like a few things out there.
Okay, yeah. Tell us about it, dude.
Okay, so big expenditures are welfare and warfare, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to shut down the welfare state right here. I'm going to shut down the welfare state, but the second thing is also how are we going to address the warfare state? And my belief is this. Any country in the world has the right, if they want to, go to war with whoever they want. Any American has the right to donate that. So if Germany wants to invade France again, then any American, I believe they have the right to support that voluntarily with money, with guns, by going over their soldiers. That's your natural right. But you don't have the right to force somebody else to pay for it. So here's what I'm going to do. It's time for us to leave NATO. I don't think there's a high risk of Germany actually attacking France anymore. The EU seems to have quelled the constant European squabbling, military squabbling. So I don't think we need to be there for that anymore. So leave NATO, let Europe fend for itself. Then I'm going to shut down all foreign military bases. My goal is this. I want to be able to defend the United States for the lowest cost possible, which might be zero, but it's certainly not what we're paying right now. And so whether we're talking about a 99% cut or a 99.9% cut, it's just to what keeps us safe for the lowest cost.
So who would you sell those bases off to? Would you just demolish them? Would you sell off the property? Would you scrap it? Would you sell it to the government first? Like, how would that work? Because I hear a lot of people talk about that.
Set up some strip malls in there.
So I mean, the same thing that we do. We have decommissioned base in the United States. A lot of them are turned into something good. I mean, some of they're turned into coffee shops. They're turned into other things, right? Because there is like a nice and rugged building, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I talked about this week is that if you imagine this, right, all the gains we've had in the last year, let's say 100 years ago somebody could make say 50 pounds of grapes. Let's say 10 years past they could make 60 pounds of grapes. The government takes 10%, 10 pounds, right? And so to them it looks like nothing's changed. And the next year the same thing, the government's taking a little bit extra. What the government has been doing for the last 100 years is taking the entire surplus and then some, which is why today you need to have two parents working to be able to barely do what one parent could 50 years ago. Even though we have better technology, more education, more automation, everything that should make us more productive we're not getting those gains. And so all this, the things that should be going into, building our houses, into giving us better lives, it's not disappearing. It's being used to build prisons and bases and warships and all kinds of nonsense. So yeah, to me, you sell off the highest bidder, cut taxes accordingly.
What would people like? I know the hypothetical answer to that would be someone from like a leftist would be like, well, what if Russia buys us? What if Russia moves into the bases that we leave behind?
Well, and then,
so weird. If France wants to pass a law against Russia moving into their bases, that's France business. Then we sell it to whoever's the highest legal bidder.
Now, I know that I've read around that we actually had a higher tax rate in the 1950s than we do right now.
We had some of the taxes we had higher nominal rates. Those were cut, but then they were shifted around to other types of taxes. So, for example, our property taxes have gone way up. To counterbalance, property taxes primarily is what fund government schools. It's one of the reasons that I would encourage states to eliminate property taxes, though the president doesn't actually have the ability to necessarily do it directly. So a lot of other taxes, the total, if you want to look at the real taxation, it's not about looking at the rates, it's about looking at the total net revenue. And the total net revenue, the total revenue today is many times higher than the government revenue in the 1950s, whether you look at that per capita or aggregate.
Yeah, it was like people say, like, well, it was like 70% back then, but that's not really what they were paying. I mean, a lot of these companies were able to, finagle at, use tax loopholes. And I think, I forget the word it was they said, but the rate that was actually being taxed from people was only like 30% from really, that's what people were actually paying.
They had more deductions back then.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to your first 100 days.
Okay, so leaving NATO, shutting down foreign military bases, bring the troops home, firing federal workers, just making the government just tiny.
What about the post office?
Actually, no. That's actually a really more important point, which is there's current laws that were put in place to protect the post office monopoly that basically say that only the post office can deliver mail. So get rid of that.
Yeah,
and just let them compete.
Yeah, if they can, if they can compete, if a random organization compete, I don't care. Fine, go ahead.
It's interesting how people are so critical of what they call monopoly in the private sector.
Yeah.
Where they'll say like, oh, Facebook has a monopoly or Microsoft has a monopoly. They're not even true monopolies, but in the public sector, all of a sudden a monopoly is like this wonderful thing. Oh, we have the post office. We need that, or whatever it is. The government monopoly is praised, where if it's a dominant market position, that's criticized. And I don't know why people have that double standard, but they do.
I think people have this belief, which has been inculcated them thanks to things like government schools, which, as you know, I believe need to be gotten rid of right this second. Is you have this belief that you have a say in government, and people don't realize.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah,
but it's like they're like, oh, the government is us. We are the government. Yeah, that's what they believe.
But
so
the
it's like
fact is, we have
didn't
more
Kyle
of a say
say
in
that?
everything else.
Didn't Kyle say that before the podcast?
Probably.
I don't think so. I
No,
mean,
but so like if it's like, oh well, I have a monopoly over, it's my monopoly. I'm part of this monopoly. That's what
Yeah,
that's what it if it's not a conscious thing, it's an unconscious thing.
yeah, maybe they think they're a part of it in some way, or I've heard people complain about their taxes, and they're like, you can't be spending my money like that, and it's like, that's not how taxes work. You don't really have a choice. You don't. Once they take the money, it's gone,
Right.
and they're
do
not
something
going to
evil with
spend it how you want it. They're going
Right.
to spend it how they want to spend it.
Well, that's the whole argument. The whole like democratic socialist argument isn't like, well, government's bad. Well, no, government's it's just not in the hands of the right people. And if it's in the hands of the people, us, then we'll just turn everything around, and all the tax money will be used for good, and we won't go to war anymore. We'll just give everyone free health care and shit. And it's like,
Yeah, it's important to point out that they take away the consumer's autonomy, right? If they take all your money, they're going to decide how that money is spent instead of you. So it actually does take away more, it takes away your freedom and your freedom
Right.
of choice. And
and I think what
like
your
Arvin
purchasing
Okay,
power.
I think you just gave the Democratic Socialists too much credit, because when I think of Democratic Socialists, at least ones that are elected or in power, I think of like Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
I think of like Ocasio-Cortez,
Mhm.
and neither one of them have I heard have really been great on being anti-war. I think Tulsi Gabbard's been much better.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some noise from AOC. I think some anti-war
that-
noise,
it's-
but it's always geared towards their socialist ends. It's never like war is immoral.
Yeah.
It's never like a principled. Well, obviously, it's not going to be a principled libertarian position, but it's not like a non-violent thing. It's more just like, we're wasting money on that. Let's spend it elsewhere instead. It's never just like, we'll just end war and I don't care where the money goes, but we got to stop killing people. That's not the noises that you hear from them typically. So you've got a point there.
they were fine with
But-
Obama, right? Whatever Obama wanted
Well,
to do
the-
was
yeah,
that was
that's
to
why
be
they
fair to
can't-
the
yeah.
Democratic Socialists as a group, they tend not to like Obama, from what I gather.
okay.
But anyways, going back to what I kind of cut off Arvin, but I think what you were going to say was, you actually have more control over corporations than you do over the post office, because you can just withdraw your money from the corporation.
But it's even better. It's like you don't need to control them, right?
Yeah.
So it's you imagine a restaurant, right? You don't get a single say in what they put on the menu.
Right.
I mean, unless you're a celebrity and you can tell. But normal people don't. You don't get a say in what they put on the menu,
Yeah.
right?
Happens all the time to me.
But but what happens is this: they're going to go out of their way to figure out what you want on their menu, so that you will show up like a
Right.
king and patronize their establishment.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll put research into your inner thoughts to make you a sandwich that you like.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like you don't need to control them. They're like the most, they're people say we are the consumers of the surf, but in reality, the businesses are the surf. They're the most well-behaved, docile serfs you can ever get.
Mm-hmm.
And capitalism has actually made normal, average consumers essentially like the lords of the manor.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
When has Applebee's ever aggressed upon me? It's like shit. Like,
Dude, I don't know. Have you ever had one of their fucking fried onions, man? That thing will aggress upon your colon.
That's true. Touche. Touche.
I'd like to stop getting junk mail. I mean, if there was a way to have a spam filter, how much time? I spend a lot of time in my life just throwing away flyers and ads, and I think, I have the post office to thank for just constantly inundating me with mail that I don't want.
That's because you got you're not their client, right? I mean,
Right, I'm not truly a customer. That's a good point.
If in my business, if we send out say one mailing of 5,000 brochures or something, that is going to be more mail than even an old time grandma who's writing every day to her grandkids is going to do in a lifetime. And so it is the commercial mail that people don't want. That's the actual client. It's just like on Facebook, like at post office, you do pay a bit. Facebook, it's free, but that's because you're not the client. The advertiser is the client. The person who's paying them is the client.
Right.
And so I don't think people get that. They think the post office is there to serve them. It's just not. I mean, that's just just a fact. They're not the main client.
Okay, so day 100. Let's go back to that first 100 days. What else?
Getting rid of the taxes, and to get rid of taxes, I'll sign an order into law. I'll pardon I'll pardon people who don't pay taxes. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that the government is aggressing as little as possible. Like, I don't think the government needs to have anything close to the amount of money that it's currently taking. I want to starve and defund the beast. Gary Johnson wanted to find a different way to feed the beast. That's not me. I want to starve the beast.
Good.
Did he say that? He wanted to find a different way to feed the beast?
I
Or
mean,
is
that's
that
fair
what you're
tax.
surmising?
Yeah, I think he was in favor of what's a fair tax is national sales tax.
Yeah.
Right.
This
And
beast
he,
is
and he went
starving over
on and
here.
on about how it's revenue neutral. That was a major selling point for me. It's revenue neutral. And when I heard that, I was like, well, that's the worst thing about it. You don't want it to be revenue neutral. You want them to have less money to bomb people with, less money to lock nonviolent people in rape cages with, less money to interfere with the food supply, less money for corn subsidies. You want them to have less money, not like the same amount of money.
Right.
It's interesting to me how, like, and I agree with, like, the libertarian view where it's like government is this huge bloated monstrosity with all these, like, spiraling agencies that are, way over budget and shouldn't even exist. And then other people look at it and they go, it's too small.
Right.
It
doesn't
it's like,
do enough.
how can we have such a different viewpoint? It's bizarre. But
Okay,
anyway.
so moving on, So Arvin, you pretty much made this your number one issue. It seems,
It's one of my issues.
Yeah, it's definitely
It's a big issue.
It's a big issue. Yeah, because anytime you speak about it, I feel like a lot of people get triggered.
They do.
The Kyle Wagners of the world just come out in groves.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't get triggered by hardly anything anymore.
Okay, so it's a pretty dicey subject matter, man. It's the age of consent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't know, for some reason it seems like when you post about it, with a written post on Facebook, it seems like then people tend to get really triggered. And it seems like they don't get as triggered when you're speaking about it. Correct?
I think there's some truth to that, and I think that when I speak about it, I think people get the sense that there's
a gray area.
It's not the question of the gray. I think people understand more why I bring it up, because when I write about it, people are just like, okay, he's just trying to trigger people, or he's a sociopath,
or he's just trying to touch kids.
Yeah, or just like wants to go on a date with a 6-month-old, or I mean like I mean that's the response. But here's the thing: there's two big issues here, right? One is there's a strategic issue here. You go back to 2008, we had a choice between Dr. Mary Ruwart, who, if I look back at recent presidential candidates, that's the one that I look up to the most, the one I identify with the most. Then you had Bob Barr and Wayne Root, who were the worst candidates. I mean, Republicans, they weren't even minarchy. I mean, they weren't anything, right? And if you look at what was the thing that they used, what was the wedge issue that made people afraid, it was age of consent. Because Dr. Ruwart talked about that, ever. And they got people so triggered about it that they got Dr. Ruwart's words, all the way to Time Magazine. That's how far they pushed it. And me looking as a student of not maybe ancient history, but a few years ago history, I'm like, well, if they did that to her, they're going to do it to me. Because all somebody have to do is look up what they did in 2008, ask the same question. They know I'm not going to lie, because I don't believe in lying to my actual, our actual people. I don't want to lie to libertarians. I'm going to lie to somebody else. So all they have to do is just ask the question, and I would say, no, I don't believe government should set age of consent. And then we would be back in 2008 with no time. So I wanted people to have the full 2.5 years to discuss it, to understand it, to really wrestle with what is a difficult issue. It's supposed to be a difficult issue. That's what we need to do. We need to wrestle with the difficult issues that are at the heart of the anarchist and voluntarist philosophies.
Word. Yeah, man. I just heard you speaking on it the other night on Facebook, and I thought you did an excellent job. And I feel like it really does. It needs to be said, because there's so many ridiculous cases where a kid sends a dick pic when he's 17, or but he had it on his phone when he was 18, so it's possession of child porn.
But of himself. Let's just be clear.
It's ridiculous.
Let me be clear. People are
himself.
getting arrested for possession of child porn of themselves from last year. That's how far this has gone.
Yeah.
And here's how far this area has gone. Now I know there's a lot of and a lot of you guys support a lot of the libertarianish Republicans. Here's how far this hysteria has gone. There is a bill to ban child sex dolls. Now I agree that child sex dolls are a little unsettling. They're kind of gross and not really my thing. I don't want to witness it. I want to have one. I get that they're disgusting. That's not the point. The point is that they had a bill in Congress. No one voted against it. No one spoke against it because people are so afraid of being labeled child molesters. And to me, the basic fact is this. If you're not a child molester, you don't really have to worry about it. I mean, if, let's say that the pragmatists got their way and there was this huge inquest into every aspect of my life from the time I was born to the present, all they would find, I was like, oh, it turns out that Arvin Vohra is not a child molester, which we didn't really think he was anyway. We were just being assholes on Facebook. So if I can get, if you are a child molester and you want to kind of keep it on the DL, fine. Yeah, don't oppose it. But if you're not one, what are you afraid of? That someone's going to call you a mean name? I mean, if you're a congressman and you can't handle somebody calling you a name, then get any other job. I mean, that's the job of a congressman.
Well, I think they're more worried about just losing their spot, right? Because then their opponent next election is going to be like, oh, my opponent voted for, he's in favor of child sex dolls,
Yeah, it's political suicide, which is why, people tell you not to get involved with the topic, because your opponents are going to want to paint you as a child molester or someone who supports child molesters, and that's just not a winning position to be in.
So think about that doll situation, right? We as libertarians understand that you have limited law enforcement resources, all right? I don't think the police should be, I don't believe in government police, but let's say for a moment we suspend that, right? I'm going to go with Kyle's minarchist position just for a moment. Nobody get too angry about that just yet.
Minarchist Arvin.
Okay, so minarchist Arvin is going to say, okay, we have limited law enforcement resources. Given that it takes a certain amount of energy to seize smuggled dolls and a certain amount of energy to seize smuggled and rescue smuggled kids, both of those are things that are going to happen. I mean, if you ban it, there's going to be a black market. We know that. There's not like they're not going to be able to get them. You just have to get them on the black market.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it comes down to there's no victim with the dolls.
One, there's no victim. And second, you are literally diverting valuable law enforcement resources from an actual crime. I mean,
There's also the argument that if they have the dolls, then they won't be going after real kids.
I don't know about that.
I don't know if that's
I agree with Arvin.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no question that it takes... However, it just like it takes effort to seize marijuana, it takes effort to find and seize child sex dolls. And that effort, just like marijuana, is taken... look at what marijuana has done to actual crime with adults, right? You have a backlog of tens of thousands of rape kits. And if you guys don't know what a rape kit is, after somebody's raped, they can go in through a very unpleasant, invasive evidence collecting process. And then that kit is sent to, for DNA testing. Here's the thing. There's a backlog of unprocessed, we're talking tens of thousands of unprocessed rape kits. And that happens because they have prioritized things like marijuana and all this nonsense, and they just don't get to it. And the worst part is, people talk about how it's so difficult for people to come forward, and of course, it is very difficult for people to come forward. The people who come forward, they don't get a phone call back. They don't say, we didn't get around to it. They just assume... after this traumatic experience, that they're like, oh, I guess the police couldn't find anything. It's not that they couldn't. They just didn't feel like it because they had marijuana to chase, and that was their higher priority. And what they're going to be telling the parents of, kids from wherever they're coming from, whether domestic or international, sorry, we would have tried to stop your kid from being kidnapped and raped, but we were too busy chasing after sex dolls, which offended people's sensibilities. Because that is literally what they're saying. And the fact that a law like that got through Congress with no opposition shows the level of fear and cowardice that we're seeing across both parties and from the Libertarian Republicans, or whatever they're called nowadays, the Freedom Republicans, I forget their name. That kind of cowardice, I understand why it's politically expedient, but that is not leadership. That is not meaningful anything. That is just kowtowing to the sheer stupidity of saying, oh no, somebody might think 99.999% of people are not child molesters. It's not this highly common thing. It happens, yes. It's tragic when it happens. We need to shut it down. But the fear that politicians have of being labeled this has gotten out of hand. And so, yeah, I'm going to stand up and say that some of these laws are stupid, because when nobody says some of these laws are stupid, we get shit like this, pardon my language, we get stuff like this where you're literally forgetting about actual victims to chase after dolls.
Okay, so you're mentioning the Libertarian Republicans, and when you say that, I think of Libertarian Republicans, I can only really think of three people, right? I think,
Massey.
Massey.
Amash.
Yeah, and Rand Paul.
Yep.
And then
now this was a House vote, so in this particular case, I don't think Rand Paul had an option to say anything about it.
So who are you pissed off at?
Well, since this was a unanimous vote,
Uh-huh.
no objection vote, no one spoke against it.
Okay.
I'm pissed at every single person who thought it was more important to chase after dolls, which is idiotic, than to chase after kids. And when I say chase after kids, like rescue kids who were, kidnapped.
Yeah, it's I guess it kind of seems like nobody wanted to be the one no vote on that one.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why I miss having Dr. Ron Paul in the House.
Yeah,
because there were times where he would be the only no vote, and that's how.
Right.
And it isn't like just an homage. Isn't he kind of doing that a lot now, from what I've read?
A lot of times.
Sometimes.
But I guess in this case.
Kind of like the
apparently
new
not
doctor
all.
now. Yeah, apparently not in that
And
case.
so here's the difference, and here's where one of the times where, because I was skeptical about Dr. Paul because he's a Republican, I'm like, it's the other side, but here's where he really won me over. There was a bill to give, I think it was Rosa Parks, like some major civil rights leader, a Congressional Medal of Freedom, and he said this is not something government should spend money on. I think we can spend money on it. Each of us could give $1,000 or $100, and it would be more than enough. He was the one no vote. Now here's the thing: it's so easy to use that move to say Dr. Ron Paul is a racist and so are all of his followers, and people do that. I mean, people say that all the time. They can say that, but that wasn't the point. He stood up for what was right when it was unpopular. That's what it means to say. Anybody can stand up for what's right when it's popular. I mean, that's not doesn't take backbone. That doesn't take anything. But the fact that Dr. Paul showed backbone there, then I learned more about him. He showed backbone in the 80s, where he would be the one person arguing against the drug war at the height of the popularity of the drug war. That is what leadership looks like to me. That's the kind of leadership I aspire towards. And do I know that people are going to call me names? Yeah, obviously. Fine, call me names. But at the end of it, if I can get people to not be in government schools, if I can get people to pardon people instead of sending them to government rape dungeons, if I can convince law enforcement that trying to rescue actual kids who are kidnapped is more important than chasing after dolls, fine. I'll take the sacrifice of being called a mean name online.
Word. So, I think now we're going to move on to a topic that is not Arvin. And finally, no, I'm just joking.
Let's do the sex strike one.
Yeah, that's where we're going, Jared.
All right.
That's where we're on the board, bro.
Nice.
Bro. So, okay, so apparently there was like an abortion bill passed, and then, so do you guys ever figure out if it's like 6 weeks or 9 weeks?
Pretty sure it was 9 weeks. Pretty sure.
Okay, so.
Well, basically the idea, so this passed in Georgia, was if there is a fetal heartbeat, so they're calling it the heartbeat law, then you can't abort. And that happens, you're saying 9, I thought it was 6 weeks. Either way, 6 to 9 weeks, 69.
6 to 9, dude.
So in response to that, Alyssa Milano, who is, was she an actress?
Yeah, she was in Charmed, and she was in a bunch of stuff.
So, but she's become basically like the SJW folk hero now.
Oh yeah.
She went on Twitter and declared a sex strike and begged all liberal, or her version of the word liberal, women to not have sex, at least not have sex with anyone, with any conservative or anyone who supports the abortion bill.
Kyle, do you think this is going to curtail the pussy flow?
I don't know what you're talking about.
No,
I think most guys that are conservative probably aren't with women that are so far left that they would would cut off sex over something like this.
Which I think is pretty funny, because one of the main oppositions to that people throw out there against, people like a lot of people like of her kind and her ilk would say, well, abstinence doesn't work. We can't preach abstinence. It doesn't work. But yet here she is calling for an abstinence sex strike.
That is very ironic, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I find it hilarious.
See, and there's two problems that I have with this whole thing, right? The first is if arguments fail you, if you don't have a good argument, and you're not that bright, you usually resort to fists. Like, use your fists when you can't use your brain. And if your brain and fist both don't work, then you resort to your genitals. It is the lowest form of argumentation that exists. But there's a second aspect of it that I think is even more toxic, which is this belief that only men are supposed to enjoy sex, and if women enjoy sex, well, then there's something wrong. And to me, that is a very toxic and negative way of looking at sex. It's a way that I had hoped had gone out in about the 1700s, but apparently,
right? You wouldn't expect to hear Alyssa Milano.
Well, to be fair, in
the
the post, she did say something about enjoying sex, but something about gratifying it through other means. So I guess she means like just start masturbating
Or
instead
child
of-
sex dolls.
or child sex dolls instead of having sex with conservative men. I guess. I mean, yeah, it's just I think she is just in it for the for keeping her career alive. I don't think she actually believes in any of this stuff. I think she's a useful idiot for the media.
Oh yeah.
And she's compared a lot to so the whole Me Too movement was essentially started by this other actress, Rose McGowan.
Weren't they friends too? I'm pretty sure they were.
They might have been friends, but basically
weren't they
Rose
on, like,
was.
Charmed together.
I'm pretty sure they were.
Yeah, I thought so, Jared.
I don't know. I've never watched this fucking show.
Me neither.
But apparently she was too radical and she was too uncontrollable, at least by the powers in the media and the powers of the movement or whatever the fuck you want to call it. So they kind of pushed her aside, even though she was the one who kind of started the whole thing. It was actually, raped by what's his name, Weinberg, right? So she was actually a victim of his Weinstein. Wrong
Jew.
Yeah.
Nice racism, Jared.
It's my Jew card, dude. So she was an actual victim, so had a legitimate claim to like the movement, so to speak. Say what you want about it, but and then Alyssa Milano came along, and I don't think she's had any, at least notorious, instance where this happened to her, and just kind of hijacked it, and now no one pays attention to this Rose chick, and everyone's fawning over Milano, and it's just. You can just tell it's all just sort of this media manipulation. It's all just kind of smoke and mirrors.
Well, she got attacked by a transgender man because she said, ladies, let's do this. And he was like, he took exception to the fact that she didn't say cis ladies. Is that what it was, Phil? I don't know. I don't follow all these people. I think they get so triggered about everything. Go ahead.
So Alyssa Milano, she posted on Twitter. She said, "We can love sex and fight for our bodily autonomy. There are lots of alternatives to cis men. Protect your vaginas, ladies. Men in positions of power are trying to legislate them. Hashtag sex strike." So this person named Sam responded and said, "Not all, quote, ladies have vaginas. Some have penises. It's not hard to put cis before ladies, but you chose not to, and that's transphobic behavior." And she responded back saying, "You're right. If I could edit it, I would. Thank you." Like, that's just the mental gymnastics there of that whole conversation.
They're all just best left to their own devices. Just don't get in the middle of it. Like, don't talk to them.
I don't know. I think that was stunning and brave.
That's my favorite meme.
Stunning and brave.
That's my favorite meme. Stunning and
It's almost
brave.
Oh shit, man! We didn't even talk about this. It's just like how stupid it was. How the guy from the Cubs, one of the fans, he put the OK symbol up in the background of a.
They said that was the white power symbol.
And they banned him for life. It's just stupid.
Oh, did he get banned for life?
Banned for life.
Wow.
Was it a black reporter?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But he held it down, just let it down with his hand, and of course, the media outrage.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, he
That's
could have meant
crazy.
okay. He could have been doing the like punch me thing.
So
No,
so they legit, like, it's not just an internet thing, like actual people legit, like the
No.
Cubs organization believes that this is a white power
Everyone
sign.
believes it because they're afraid to. I mean,
Wow. Dude, that's a 4chan troll.
I know.
That's so
It was
insane.
like, hey, even this is a joke. Like, hey, I'm sure we could get people to believe that the OK symbol is a white power sign. Look, we're gonna make a fake post about it just to show how crazy the left is. And then people actually started believing it. So now people do it as a fake thing just to troll
So
people.
now we can't use one of our favorite, convenient symbols for saying okay.
Yeah.
Dude, someone
Right.
responded to it online saying, well, swastikas were once Hindu symbols, and now you can't use them because
but they still
Nazis-
are. I mean,
Oh, it's funny. I had someone I
Yeah,
worked
if you go to Asia, you see them everywhere.
Yeah.
They're not like tearing them
Dude,
down.
funny story is I worked with someone who literally posted online. She took a picture of it, and she was like, this fucking not okay having swastikas on your front door. Oh my God, like I'm terrified. And I had to remind her, I said, that I knew what it was. I saw it was like swooped across the front door, and I said, those are Hindu symbols.
Mm-hmm.
Those are Hindu symbols. And I had to explain to her on her Facebook post, no, those are Hindu symbols. Like I know, I've seen that before. I know exactly what that is.
Is it angled a little bit or something? Is it
Yeah,
at least
it's not like turned. It's
Well, no,
more
the
just straight.
arms go in a different direction too.
No, No, it can do either way.
Yep.
I'll send a picture of it because it's still the person still lives there that I know.
Okay, so we're about to wrap this up. Arvin, is there anything you want to say before we get off here?
Wait, I want to. What are your thoughts on R. Kelly, real quick?
On R. Kelly,
Yeah.
is in what aspect?
A hero or a child molester?
I don't know enough about his background, but as far as I know, I honestly just don't even know enough about it. I mean, I know that he's a good singer. I know that there was like something involving somebody who was like 15 or 16 or something like that.
I mean, it sounds like you probably don't know enough to have to spout out an informed
With
public
ambush
opinion.
Kyle.
So let me put this in perspective, right? If let's just imagine for a moment. Let's imagine for a moment that instead of trying to do your damnedest to make sure that your kids know as little about sex, relationships, procreation, raising kids, try to make them as ignorant as possible, which is the current parenting norm, and that's what we're supposed to do as parents. Let's say you didn't do that. You actually tried to do your best to educate. Do we really think that somebody's like 15 or 16 would not be able to understand a situation? Not to say that somebody couldn't use like drugs or alcohol or pressure, all those things. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, could somebody in an ideal circumstance there make informed consent? Of course. I mean, there's no imaginable way where you'd say that there's no way. Now, I don't know about R. Kelly's case, so maybe it's a situation where somebody gave informed consent, and maybe it's a situation where somebody didn't give informed consent. I mean, people use all kinds. I mean, Bill Cosby was going after people who were not of any particular age, but were not exactly giving informed consent by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
Yeah, he was drugging them unbeknownst to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, anything you want to say, Arvin, before we get off here?
Not really.
Oh yeah, I just want to make sure. Yeah, we just want to make sure you have a platform to say whatever you want to say when you come on our podcast.
Yeah, I
'cause
appreciate that.
we love you here. Thanks for coming back again. And I also want to say we have the Patreon now. So if you want to help us keep the lights on here in Anarchy Basement, visit us at patreon.com/punk rock libertarians. And if you contribute a minimum of $1 per month, you will receive access to our After Hours podcast. So hit us up over there. We also have t-shirts over at libertariancountry.com. If you enter in the code PRL or the code PRL podcast, you'll receive a 10% discount. Until next time, live free
Or die.
Nice. It's a good show.
1 second. 1 second.